Hello, ranch friends. It is so good to be with you today. I'm Joy Ryan. I'm president and CEO of Dakota Boys and Girls Ranch, and it is an honor to have a chance to talk to you. Of course, it would be a lot better if we could be in person, but then we'd be wearing these. So at least we have the chance to connect this way. You know, we talk at the ranch a lot about presence and how what kids need is to be able to say they've been seen, they've been heard, they've been listened to. And really, isn't that what we've all been missing over the last few months? That need to get connected, that need to feel the hug of somebody who loves you, that need to laugh with people, that healing presence that we have when we're with people who really care about us. That's what we're all missing today, and really that's what our kids have been missing all their lives. Imagine with me for a minute, if you can, if some of the loneliness and some of the isolation you've had to experience over the last few months was what you had lived through your whole life. That's really, truly why some of our kids just don't know how to connect and don't know how to behave. Whenever they've let someone in, they've gotten hurt. Whenever they've let someone feel their trust, they've been betrayed. And through your help and your support, we're able to help them find that ability to be connected, to be present for others, and to heal. So you are really helping us create a healing presence. You know, it all started in 1952 when a small church outside of Mapleton, North Dakota, reacted to what was going on after World War II. A lot of men had died in World War II, and there were a lot of single-parent families, and in the rural areas of North Dakota, it was really hard for some of the large families to find a way to survive. So unfortunately, some of the younger children, the boys, when they hit 10, 11, 12 years old, went to work out, live away from the family, went to work on other farms or make their own way in the city. And that was tough. And this little church outside of Mapleton, North Dakota said that's really not the way it should be. They said, really, these kids should have a chance to be kids. And they started to recruit host families, what we would now call foster families. And they found wonderful, loving families across the state of North Dakota who were willing to take these young boys in and take them as part of their family so that they could have the presence of people around them that they could love and trust, and they could have a childhood. There were two wonderful people up by Tully, North Dakota, which is just barely south of the Canadian border. Ida Mae and Louie Butt. And Ida Mae and Louie had a ranch, and they had no children of their own, and they had a big, big ranch house. And they heard about what this little group was doing, which by then was called Dakota Boys Ranch. And they said, you know, we could take some kids. So first they took 6 kids, 6 young boys. And then they closed in the lean-to that was on the house, and they took another 2. And then they bought a couple bunk beds, and they had 10 kids living with them that they were caring for, loving, and making a family. At that point, the directors of Dakota Boys Ranch at the time was looking for land outside of Minot, North Dakota, to be able to expand because the need was so great. Ida Mae and Louie decided to donate their entire ranch so that the land that our main campus sits on outside of Minot, North Dakota, could be purchased and developed. And their gift to us has been made for a better life for hundreds and thousands of kids since that point in time. You know, it's kids like Xavier. You know, I had the chance when I come to some of the schools that we have on our 3 campuses. A lot of times the kids like to give me a tour, even though I've been through the schools 100 times. It's their chance to kind of do some social interaction and show what they've learned and show who they are. And one day I came to the Minot school, and Xavier wanted to give me a tour. And Xavier was a big, strapping, 17-year-old. And he said, I've been learning and I want to show you around. And I said, okay. So as we walked, we talked. And I said, Xavier, tell me about your life before you came here. Well, Xavier's life, he lived in a 1-bedroom apartment with 9 other people. And the majority of the people he lived with were addicts of some sort. His mom was there, and the rest of the people kind of rotated through, except for his little brothers and sisters who were there permanently with him. But Xavier started acting out. He started using drugs and alcohol and started getting in trouble, and eventually came to Dakota Boys and Girls Ranch. I said, so tell me about your school before you got here. And he said, Joy, I never really went to school. Nobody really cared if I went to school. I asked Xavier, what's the most important thing you've learned since you've been here? And he said, I'm pretty smart. And I had to stop and smile, because the presence that your support has allowed us to create for boys like Xavier help him find his best self. As we walked through the rest of the tour, he wanted to talk about Hemingway and The Old Man and the Sea. And it's been a few years since I read it, but we kind of limped our way through it. But his enthusiasm for what he was learning was absolutely remarkable. Xavier graduated from high school. As far as he knows, he's the only one in his family that's ever graduated. And my hope and my prayers go with him as he's moving into adulthood. I also think more recently about a young man named Clay. And I was on our Bismarck campus, and Clay asked if he could meet with me. And I checked with his treatment team, because I don't want to get into the middle of something that I'm not supposed to be in. But his treatment team said, no, Clay has a few things he wants to talk to you about. So sat down, and Clay is an extremely handsome young man. He's got dimples that seem to be attached to his bone structure, and he smiles, and he's charming. And his reason for meeting with me, he thought he should be moved to a different one of our campuses. But that wasn't the real reason. We sat and we talked, and what I learned was that until about the age of 14, Clay had pretty much raised himself. He was the only child in the family, and both his parents were addicts. And, he took himself to school when he felt like it, didn't go to school when he didn't. Nobody ever asked him. Nobody ever wondered. And when he was 14, he ran away from home. And the hardest part of Clay's story for me is that nobody in his family looked for him. It wasn't until he was picked up by the police at a party that anybody cared that he was gone. There was no presence in Clay's life. There was nobody he was connected to. And yet, he needed that connection. And he needs to know that people care. So Clay looks for opportunities to have us connect with him, whether it's asking the staff to sit down and read with him, or playing basketball, or going on a field trip down to the garden to pick the zucchini and the cucumbers. He really enjoyed growing his own food. Or maybe asking Joy to sit and talk with him about moving to a different campus, even though that really isn't the purpose. We all need to be seen. Clay needed to be seen. And he continues to work on getting healthy and being strong, because now he knows he's worth it. Now he has value. And that's what your support does. It helps these kids, one child at a time, feel the presence and the love of Christ and the support of others around you. I know as we sit and we visit with you, you're going to meet a lot of the ranch staff. I think there's 4 or 5 of us visiting with you today, and you'll hear about the different expertise and the different things that happen at the ranch, the individualized education, the psychiatric care, the horses, all of those things. And they're all important. There is nothing that works independently. It all is a matter of wrapping each child in the care they need to become their best selves. But the most important part of it all is the connection that kids make to each other and to the staff, so that they see they have value and they have potential and they have a place in this world. Because before they come here, they've probably never heard that message. They've heard they're incorrigible, they've heard they're unteachable, they hear they're stupid, they hear they're ugly, they hear they're fat, they hear every kind of derogatory, nasty comment to keep them down, and they start to believe it. And they start to fight back, and they don't trust, and they get angry, and they push away. So the most important thing we do here is we show them that they are of value, that God has been with them every step of the way, and that we believe in them. And we can do that because you believe in them. Last story I want to tell you about is David, and David is one of the hardest stories that I ever tell. David came to us. He had been in 32 out-of-home placements. When he came to us, he came straight from the hospital. David was about 12 years old. He was catatonic because of the medications he was on. He was not potty trained. He didn't have any hygiene control. David is on the autism spectrum to a very high degree. His language skills are good, although a little odd. Sometimes he loves rhymes, and every name he ever learned had to be rhymed with something or had to be nicknamed. So I got everything from Joy to the World to Joystick to whatever he could come up with at that moment. But our staff wrapped David in everything. His aptitude for Legos was phenomenal. When David came to us, he had never spent a full day in school, and he had not been in a family since he was 4 years old. He had been in out-of-home care for 9 of his, well, by the time he was assessed, 9 of his 13 years. The abuse he had experienced as a tiny person by people who didn't understand his autism was so severe that his trust and his ability to reach out and even put an arm around somebody's shoulders was just too big a step. But over time, seeing that people were really willing to meet him where he was at, he started to heal. The first time David really talked to me, he came up to me and he had a bundle of papers. And he said, "Joy, do you want to go on my journey with me?" And I said, "Sure, where are we going?" And here he was writing a trip. He was going to take this spacecraft trip, and he was collecting his crew, and we all had to sign on to the crew. And I was number 73. I was number 73 on his crew. And he said, "What do you want to be?" And I said, "Well, I want to be the navigation officer." And he said, "You can't be the navigation officer. I already have one." This is a child that wasn't speaking a year before. And I said, "Well, if I can't be, what do you want me to be?" And he said, "Well, shouldn't you be like the captain?" And I said, "Well, aren't you the captain? You should be the captain. It's your journey." He said, "Well, that's a pretty good point. Okay, you can be the assistant navigation officer." So I signed my name and we went on from there. Every time I saw David, he would put his arm around my shoulder for a side hug and say, "So, Joy to the World, how are you today? Do you want to see my pictures of my cats? Do you want to see my pictures of..." And we would go through pictures of cats that he was carrying with him or holding with him. And you know what? David was going to school full time. And he was showering every day. And he was taking care of himself. And he was healing. And by working very, very hard with a lot of folks who cared deeply about David, we were able to find an aunt that had lost track of David 10, 12 years before. And she decided that it was time for David to come home. And I have to tell you, when David, I'm giving myself goosebumps, when David was getting packed to go, first of all, we had like 7 totes of Legos. But he walked around, he said, I am so glad that I know you. And then he would use our nicknames. Say, I'm so glad I know you, Joystick. I'm so glad I know you, Nikki Bell, because we were present. Thank you for being present to the kids at Dakota Boys and Girls Ranch through your support. And I'll ask you for 3 things. First, and always the most important, are your prayers. Please pray for our kids and our staff. There is no way, this is hard work, and there is no way we can do it without God's help. And with your prayers, we get stronger and better at what we do. Secondly, if there's a chance that you can provide financial support, we would be honored. We work hard to invest the funds that people share with us. We know that any dollar that is given to us is the sweat of your brow and your heart being shared. We treat those dollars with respect and in the best interest of the kids. And if you have estate plans that you're putting together, everything we do at the ranch has been because of people like Ida May and Louis Butt, who were able to see their way clear to share with us in their estate plans. We are so blessed to have the support of so many and so honored to take this journey with the children. Thank you so much, and God bless.